Well, it gives me a lot of joy to be able to be up here this morning talking about one of the Bible's truly great passages, one that has captured the hearts and imaginations of Christians and not Christians alike for thousands of years. It's one that contains within it the whole of the Christian story, so much so that Pastor Timothy Keller once said, if we lost the entirety of the scriptures but still had just this one story, we would have enough. It's a story with three main characters, two sons and a father. And over the next few weeks, we're going to be looking at each character in the story and invite the Spirit of God to show us our place in it, who we are and who he's inviting us to become. And today, we're turning our attention to the younger son, the first prodigal, which that word means wasteful, by the way, if you were not sure. Growing up, I thought I came up with all of these different definitions of what I thought it meant, and none of them were correct. So, it means wasteful. This story is actually the third in a set of three that Jesus tells on the subject of lostness. And all three are in response to the muttering of some religious leaders who were walking alongside him. There's this big crowd of people, of followers, and this sort of mishmash of everybody in between, from religious people to those who were just curious. And on their way, they're walking on their way to Jerusalem to do the Palm Sunday and Easter things that we talked about a few weeks ago. And the religious leaders, they are irked because Jesus, quote, welcomes sinners and eats with them. And so Jesus tells these three parables. He begins with the story of a shepherd who has 100 sheep, but then one of them goes missing. And so he leaves the 99 behind to go and find this one sheep. And when he does, he joyfully puts it on his shoulders and carries it home and throws a big party with his friends to celebrate that the sheep had been found. The following parable is then one of a woman who has 10 coins, but she loses one. And so she sweeps through her house, she's looking everywhere for it, and when she finally finds it, she throws a party that was surely worth more than the coin itself to celebrate finding the coin. And then finally, our passage from this morning. There's the younger of two sons who represents the sinners in the crowd who are listening. This younger son decides that he's tired of waiting for his father to die to receive his inheritance. He wants it right now. And then there's an older son who we'll look at next week who represents the religious leaders who are listening in the audience. And finally, there is a father who represents God. This father obliges the younger son's demands to give up his estate, which surely would have meant selling off a third of the family land so that he could give this money. That was the law in Deuteronomy said that the younger of two sons would get a third of the land, the older gets 2/3. I'm the oldest of 5 boys, so, it's going to go well for me. It'll be great. This would have caused great shame on the family, not to mention deep pain for the father, to whom the message was essentially, you're as good to me as dead. I don't care about you. I just want your stuff. And then the passage says, the son took the money and he set off for a distant country and there squandered his wealth in wild living. So just like the sheep and the coin in the preceding parables, this son is lost. He's lost in a distant country, in a far-off land. There's something about that phrase, distant country, that really stood out to me this week. This son, he's been dreaming. Like there's a certain allure to this idea of a distant or far-off land. When I was a teenager growing up in LA, New York was that place for me. Like I had just seen New York in movies, and so to me, New York was a place where like all the beautiful people go to wear beautiful clothes, and it's like magically snowing, but nobody gets cold and wet, and it's just perfect, and you walk around, it's like this winter wonderland. If you've ever been to New York in the summer, it is the worst. We live in a really great area. New York in the summer is no fun at all. But this younger son, you can imagine him like hanging out with his friends, hearing stories of this place of acclaim, where people can go and make a name for themselves, where the world's most talented people come together to be something, to be someone. It's a place of flourishing, where the denarii rules and the poor and unwanted, they're out of sight, out of mind. You don't even have to look at them. It's a place of progress and innovation, where all of the important people in the world are gathering together and they're investing their time and their resources because they don't just live in the present, they are shaping the future. It's a place where you can earn your way to the top, and in doing so, finally become relevant, spectacular, powerful. A place where you wake up to the daily promise. You can have unconditional love if you just have to leave home. The younger son desperately longs for this, so much that he rejects home, the place that he's from, his way of living and thinking, the way that's been handed down to him from generation to generation. And he spends everything he has chasing this love and acceptance that he yearns to earn for himself. But it's always just out of reach. We all feel the call of the distant country. As Henry Nouwen put in his wonderful little book on this parable, I'm the prodigal son every time I search for unconditional love where it cannot be found. For Jesus, this is what it means to be lost. To be lost is to wander from who you are and who you were made to be. And when we get caught up in this chase, it is actually violence to our souls and to the lives of people around us. The far-off country says, here you can find appeal. If you just get a little thinner, a little more beautiful, then you'll feel lovable. And so we're unkind to ourselves and our bodies. We try to make ourselves feel better and somehow make ourselves feel worse by comparing ourselves to those around us. The far-off country says, here you can finally shake those bad habits and become an actually good and honorable person. You just have to work harder. You have to do more. You have to volunteer more. And then maybe you'll be able to prove that you're worth some love. And so we set impossible standards for ourselves and others, and we look down on ourselves and others when we don't live up to them. The far-off country says, here, if you work hard enough, you can be on top of your team, of your company, of your industry, whatever. And so we're a little bit more ruthless and a little bit more cutthroat. And we give more time and attention to work and less to things like family and relationships. And then we kind of naturally judge anyone around us who's not willing to work as hard or sacrifice in the way that we do for upward mobility. The far-off country says, here, your children can succeed. And if you can make your children succeed, then all of the shame you carry about what your life is and is not will finally be erased. You can make it through them. See, on top of what this does to us as individuals, I have to say, as someone who works with young people, I see it constantly. We're not just causing pain in our lives when we pursue these things and when we live life in this way. We're also modeling to the next generation that their value is not in who they are or who they were made to be. It's just in what they do, what they can accomplish and achieve. In our pursuit of more, we're leading them into lostness. In our parable, Jesus describes this leaving behind who we are and going after these things in three ways. He describes it as being in need, as longing to be filled, and as hungering for pig's food. You can see how he thinks about it, right? This is a life of lostness. To be lost is to wander from who you are and who you were made to be. Which brings up an important question. Who were we made to be? I have a couple of friends, Lucy and Jasper, who are going to come up here and share a story about a time they were lost. So guys, come on up here. And as they do, I want you to know when we were working, come on up, when we were working on this week, Lucy said, are you going to use a parable to describe a parable? I was like, yeah, Lucy, we are. It's going to be really great. So, oh, thanks. Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to have Jasper go first. Jasper, you have a story about a time you felt lost in a very crowded place.
Yes.
Okay, tell us about it.
You're good. So one time...
Can I see it really quick? It looks good. Try again.
One time I went to Disneyland, and a very crowded place very noisy. And I felt uncomfortable because, like, I don't really like very crowded, noisy places. It kind of just makes me feel jittery inside. And so we got onto the train that goes around the park, and I kind of just took a few seconds to close my eyes and breathe. And I kind of found my way into this like calmness from like this crazy place that's very loud. And I kind of just was more calm after I just took a few seconds to breathe.
And you told me there was something that you kind of fixed your mind on, or someone that
Yeah.
helped you.
I just fixed my mind on my mom because she was the only person I knew at that park. And I was like, as long as
Good reason.
I'm with her, then I won't get lost and I'll be okay, because then I just won't be lost.
That's great. You want to give that to Lucy there? Okay, and yeah, thanks, Jasper. And Lucy, what about you? Hold the microphone up high. There you go.
So, this winter we went to London and we were at the British Museum, and my mom gave us, all the kids, the Rick Steves audio tour podcast.
Rick Steves is the best.
Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah.
Love him.
Too good, because
Yeah.
I started, running around, looking at all the artifacts, looking at like the cool stuff, and all of a sudden, my parents look up and they're like, "Wait, where's Lucy?" And then they're like, "Oh wait, there she is." And then I blend into the crowd, and then they're like, "No!" And then, so then they're like, "Wait, she's following the podcast." So then they take out the podcast, they skip ahead, it says, "Go to the mummy sarcophagus on floor 1. They're like, "There!" And then I think they eventually found me, and I was looking at the Parthenon statues. I had no idea I was lost. I was just, looking at the cool statues.
Yeah, you were just wandering.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you told me there was something that made it so you didn't feel like you have to worry at all.
So I didn't really know where my parents were, but I'm like, they'll find me eventually. They always do.
They always do. Well done. Thanks, you guys. Yes, sit down. Great stories. I want to make sure you caught what Lucy said at the end there. She said, "I wasn't really worried because I was like, they'll find me. They always do." There's a question that we're meant to ask when we listen to this parable, right after the preceding two, which talk about this lost sheep and a lost coin. Why did no one go looking for this son? Right? In both of those stories, the person who's responsible for the thing that is lost takes the initiative to go and find it. There's a lot of different ways to consider that question, and I'm sure we'll talk more about them during the series, but I think one response can be found in verse 17, which says, "When he came to his senses, he said, 'How many of my father's hired servants have food to spare, and here I am starving to death?'" That phrase, "came to his senses," that's a good translation because that's a common phrase that we use. It's something that we know. But the literal translation there is, "when he came to himself." When he came to himself. Literally, he wasn't himself. It's like that Snickers commercial. He wasn't himself, and then, boom, he woke up. It was like he realized and remembered who he was all of a sudden. Maybe you can relate. I think there's a moment that we all experience in our lives when we realize that the dream has been dashed. The promise of the distant country has been broken. And the name that we've tried to make for ourselves has been scribbled out. See, the prodigal son did not come to a new realization here amongst the pigs. He came to himself. He came to what he always knew to be true deep down. He came to really what was the source of the longing that drove him to the distant country to begin with. He came to his identity as God's beloved child. At the core of who you and I are is that we are made in God's image. That is both an identity and a vocation. So it's an identity, which means that you and I have inherent dignity, value, and worth simply because God made us. And that can never be taken from us. And it is a vocation as well. It's a calling to be who we were made to be. Almost all of what the Bible calls sin can be found in the disconnect between our identity and our vocation as the image of God. Sin is us not being who we were made to be. It's leaving home. Henry Nouwen put it like this: leaving home is a denial of the spiritual reality that I belong to God with every part of my being, that God holds me safe in an eternal embrace, that I'm indeed carved in the palm of God's hands, hidden in their shadows. Leaving home is living as though I do not yet have a home and must look far and wide to find one. This leaving of our true self, who God made us to be, it eventually and always leads to pain and brokenness, because it's literally a tearing of ourselves in half. And so it's painful. It brings us to our knees in the mud, hopeless and lost. And there, smeared by the smut of swine, roundly ruined and resigned, at the end of esteem and the death of a dream, a sacred scheme, a love supreme. Don't miss this. We often find out that God doesn't fail when he does not intervene in our moment of pain. The pain that this son experienced in the failure of his ability to make something of his own life and earn love by being spectacular and relevant and powerful, it revealed to him that which was true all along. This is the nature of love. Love is vulnerable and it is revealing. The Father's love was so deeply written into the core of the Son's heart that it had to be revealed in this moment. As James Baldwin put it, love takes off the masks that we fear we cannot live without and know we cannot live within. And so this son, he comes to himself. He remembers who he is and who he was made to be, and he makes a plan, right? Like, I may have been a son at some point, but surely my father won't let me live like a son anymore. I know he's good to his servants, so I'll ask if I can be a servant, he thinks to himself. I'll make reparations by earning my place, which is the same mentality he took to the distant country. He wonders, as we all do, is home really a place where I belong? Especially now, have I wandered too far? What will my father say and do? Will he be shocked? Will he banish me for my disrespect? Will he give me 40 lashes as recompense? Will he at least let me be a servant? I'll fall to my knees, I'll beg. And then, the plot twist of the story. While he was still a long way off, his father saw him, was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. See, the father had been dreaming too, not of the distant country, but of his son's homecoming. He sees his son while he's still a long way off, indicating that he had been watching and waiting for this moment, studying the horizon for any glimpse of movement that was out of the ordinary. And then when he saw him, he was moved with compassion. This distinguished man took off running. He embraced his son. He gushed with affection for the boy who had been lost, but was now found. The son tries to share his rehearsed little speech, but unlike the voices of the distant land, what the son has to bring to the table has no bearing on his acceptance here. The father, you can almost feel him being like, just shut up, and gives him a hug. Because the son who was lost is found. He's home. Whoso draws nigh to God, one step through doubting's dim, God will advance a mile in blazing light to him. God's love chases after us. We're going to sing a song in just a minute that has a lyric that says, "Our dreams up in smoke beneath plunging nails. Punchline of the joke, love never fails." I love this line. I love it so much because in it we see the cost of God's great love. These plunging nails that held him to the cross, as well as the world reorienting reality of death's power when put up against God's love. That even death itself is but a joke in the face of God's unfailing love. In his incredibly beautiful book, highly recommend it, called The Wood Between the Worlds, Pastor Brian Zahnd says this: "In a world built upon the greed of empire, the violence of war, and the hatred of enemy, A life lived according to the supremacy of love can only end at the cross. Once a symbol of imperial terror, the cross has become the eternal symbol of divine love. When we look upon a cross today, we don't see an instrument of torture and death. We see the supreme demonstration of God's love. We see the lengths to which God will go to save the world, to reclaim that which was lost. Compelled by love, Jesus died for all, that all might be made alive in his resurrection. This is the mystery of redemption. So the invitation for us all this first week in this parable is simply this: come home. Come home to the image of God you were made to be. Come home to the voice of the Father who says, "You are my beloved daughter. With you I am well pleased." At NCC, may we be a church of continual homecoming, setting an example for the next generation of what it looks like not to make it big and be successful, but to be at home in the arms of our Maker. No matter how far off you are, in the pit with the pigs, or close by trying to fend off the appeals of the distant land, his arms are open wide. So come home to the one who made you, to the one who sees you, who knows you, who watches for you, who loves you. As Lucy said, he'll find you. He always does.